Just to bring you in a little closer, you can see where I've tied it on. There's the top of the wire remesh. These are about 5 inches, 5-inch square. Would that be 15 centimeters? Maybe a little bit less than 15 centimeters, 12 centimeters. And that's the size of the square. Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I thought that I'd do a video on the different trellises I have in my garden. My general approach to trellises is slap them together and go with what works, and cheap. Fast, easy, and inexpensive is my approach to trellises. And I use different approaches. I don't do everything one way. I basically do whatever seems to work with what I've got lying around and what's quick and expedient, and what solves the problem with the least amount of effort on my part. So I got one kind of trellis for my cucumbers, I got one kind of trellis here for my peas, same with my beans, and I got another approach for my tomatoes. And I change these things from year to year, so what I'm doing this year isn't necessarily what I'll do next year, but I hopefully I'll give you some ideas from what might work for you, and have a watch. Alright, so over here I've got the trellis I use for my cucumbers. It's put together just by using this cheap jute, dollar store jute twine, about $1.25 a roll. What's it got? 50 meters, 154 feet per roll. And I just drive a stake, dead tree basically, drive a stake in the ground about every 4 feet. This bed is 10 feet long. And I just tie it on one end, and I just loop it around, not super tight, but I just run it along here. I'll loop it around and send it to the next one, and then to the next one, and just go all the way around. And I just keep adding tiers as necessary as the cucumbers seem to need it. It's kind of flimsy, and it seems like not the strongest thing in the world, but the point is that it lasts a season, right? And then when you want to cut it down, all you need is a sharp knife, and you just cut the thing, and it falls apart. The jute is biodegradable, so it's relatively easy to put together and relatively quick to take down. The cucumbers have these sort of twisty things on them. They're like little, I don't even know what they're called. I wish I knew what these things are called, but there's these things that come off the cucumbers that sort of twist, and they'll grab onto this rope and really grab it really well. The stems of the cucumbers are spiky, and those tendril things, here's one here, look like this, right? They wrap around, it's naturally, if they're touching something, they'll wrap around it. Almost like, I can't explain it, but it wraps around really tightly. I don't really understand why it does that, but it does it. So that adds integrity to the system. We get a lot of wind here, and we get a lot of weather, and the cucumbers always seem to hold on and have no problem going up that trellis. I mean, you got to train it up there a little bit. Doesn't happen naturally, but as long as you snake the vines through the trellis, they'll grab on, no problem. Over here I've got a bean trellis. These are rattlesnake pole beans, and I've used wire remesh for this. It's just a 4x8, not sheet, but a 4x8 piece of heavy gauge wire, maybe twice the gauge of coat hanger, much more stiff than coat hanger though, and it's in 5-inch squared. I'll bring you in closer to have a closer look at it, but it's pretty solid stuff, probably lasts multiple years. It's just steel, it rusts, but when it's rusty like that, it helps the plants grab on, because the plants sort of like something with a bit of, they don't like smooth things, they like rough things, because just like natural surfaces in nature. So you drive 3 stakes in the ground, and you just tie, it's tied on. You just tie it on. It takes a couple minutes to throw one of these together. Of course, you have to have a place to store it, but it is a very fast trellis to put together, the wire remesh, and the plants grab onto it no problem. The other drawback with using the wire remesh is that you have to get the plants off of it at the end of the year. It's one reason I like using the jute, because you just cut the whole thing and it's down. But the jute does take a little bit longer to put together. This is really, if you come home from a long hard day of work and you got to put up a trellis, you don't want to spend a lot of time. This is a quick way to do it, right? It seems to me the faster the trellis is to put together, the longer it takes to take it down. Anyway, those are all decisions to make on the fly. This works really well for beans. I have mine about maybe 8 inches off the ground. I find any higher than that, the beans have a hard time finding it. So it's about 8 inches off the ground. The thing's only 4 feet high. So the higher, once I get to this is the top of it right here, I just use more jute twine just to give it an extra few feet, right? This whole trellis here is about 6 feet tall. I could have gone another foot, I think, because I can reach 8 feet high myself. I'm 6'4". So I could have gone a bit higher, but there are other people, you know, my wife and kids got to use this too. So I find I keep it around 6 feet high. Once the beans have got to the top, I just sort of train them horizontally along it. And you know, eventually fall comes and frost comes and takes care of all your problems for you. But anyway, this is producing really, really well, and it's a good trellis system, I have to say. Just to bring you in a little closer, you can see where I've tied it on. There's the top of the wire remesh. These are about 5 inches, 5-inch square. Would that be 15 centimeters? Maybe a little bit less than 15 centimeters, 12 centimeters. And that's the size of the square. You can see where it's, you know, that's the top of it. So I've just added a line of jute, another line of jute, another line of jute, that sort of thing, right? All the way along. Over here I use the wire remesh for my peas, which are pretty much done. I got lots of beans, bush beans growing down the bottom here. I did plant some pole beans to climb these, and they are sort of climbing, but I don't know if they're going to make it in time for the frost. Planted them very, very late, so I don't think these pole beans are going to amount to anything. But anyway, I got lots of peas, and the peas are basically done. We ate our last peas last night. And there's still some there, believe it or not. But yeah, so I guess it is still kind of producing, even though the pea plants look dead. So it's not bad, peas to the middle of August. But you know, it started slowing down a couple weeks ago. The thing with peas, I find they don't. This is the wire remesh here. They don't always grab. So when sometimes you'll see like a whole bunch of them want to fall off a bit. So then I wrap the thing with some jute just to hold them in close and train them back towards the trellis so they'll grab on. Finally, here's the tomato trellis I've done. Now my tomatoes are the bush variety, so they don't really need, generally speaking, to be trellised, but it does clean things up. And I've got mine, and people are going to comment, I got mine planted a bit too closely, and I've been extremely lazy with my tomatoes. And I usually are. I'm usually fairly lazy with my tomatoes. They don't really come along till September, and that's just the way things go. So I don't put a lot of energy in them, and they seem to take care of themselves. And in September I get a ridiculous amount of tomatoes, so they're still a bit green. But I use a kind of adaptation of the Florida trellis approach. So I drive in a stake about every 4 feet, and then I find about every 4 feet in height you need to put something stiff, right? So this is two sticks. I tie them together at the center here, and then you tie them really tight on either end, and it makes it quite stiff, like one stick. I mean, I only use 2 sticks here because I didn't have one long enough to go the length of it. That's all. But it doesn't matter, right? You're not building a bridge or a scaffold. You're building something that's strong enough and reliable enough to last a season. Using again the jute twine, which I can just hack with a paring knife, and away it goes. Right, so it's very simple. And the reason you put this on the top and make it stiff is it just stiffens up the whole structure, right? And then for the tomatoes, I don't know if you can see this, but every tier you have your string, and you sort of weave it back and forth through your plants, and then you tie it around the center piece, and then you continue to just, almost like you're sewing it, you're weaving it back and forth through the plants. And every tier you do on the opposite side of the plant. So for instance, this tier went on this side of the plant where I'm standing, which is the east side of the garden. So when I go up a level, I'd put the next string on the other side of the tomato to keep it from falling that way, right? And you just keep doing that. Every tier, you just put it on the opposite side of each plant. And it very simply holds it up. And you just, I think I probably need to do one today. I find every 6 inches or so, that's all you need to do. These plants aren't going to grow much higher because these are determinants, plants that only grow to a certain height. But I thought I'd just add one layer of string to this today so you can see the process. For those that are interested, this will totally work for indeterminates. It's probably one of the easier, faster ways to do it. So have a watch here. All right, so I don't know how well this is going to come across on camera, but here goes. So I'm just going to tie this string about 6 inches above the last. I actually find it kind of difficult to sew this through, so I just measure it off to be about, 2 feet longer than the entire length. That's enough string, so I'm just going to do that now. That should be enough. I just use a very simple slip knot to tie this on here. So it's about 6 inches higher than the last tier. That's all it's needed. And now I'm just going to very gradually sew this through. So you're just going opposite side of whatever you did last time. Tighten her up there. Put it around the big one. No special knots here. Just when I get to the other end, I just use a half hitch, a double half hitch basically. That's all that's required. So, if you're growing tomatoes, you might come out once a week and add a tier like this. That's all you need to do to stay on top of it, depending on their rate of growth, right? But that way you don't have to build the whole trellis in one go. You can sort of just do it as needed. You drive the stakes in the ground and just keep adding strings as needed. It's a pretty simple, pretty cheap way to do a trellis. And of course, these are just dead trees from around my property. But you could use electrical conduit pipe. You could use PVC pipe. You could use basically anything that's reasonably long and reasonably stiff that someone throws out in their trash. There's all kinds of different, 1x3, 2x2, really anything that's strong enough to do the job, right? Anything will work. Anyway, that's my general approach to trellises. I like using cheap jute twine. I like using just simple sticks and things like that, and just slapping things together. And as long as you observe a few basic principles, the trellis should stand up. I'm always amazed at what they sell in garden centers and hardware stores, cages and things like that. I find it all just a complete waste of money. I'm sure people swear by what they use, but I kind of like making things anyway. I like the process. Every year I change my approach a little bit. As I figure new things out. And the ideal trellis for me is the one that takes almost no time to put together and take apart and holds the plant up for as long as the plant needs to be held up. I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, click the bell so you know when I drop a new video, and check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it. Have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.